Sunday radio show, and we are just going to go right directly to our next guest because it is hour number 2, kids. And just lots of things happening, lots of moving parts, lots of shenanigans. We're having all sorts of fun, and we're trying to get as many people in here as humanly possible. And I don't know. We're going to make it happen. Mary, how are you, my friend?
I'm great. How are you today?
Pretty good, actually. I've got so many people that don't understand the concept of a time zone. So I've been having people jump on top of each other. I've had people calling early. I've had people call late. I've had people call when I'm supposed to be doing other interviews. I apologize. Thanks for being with us today.
Of course. Apology accepted. I'm glad that I got the time zone right.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're a tremendous, tremendous artist.
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Well, I was born and raised in Austin, and I've been playing piano and guitar for 20 years, and electronic music as well. I went to UT, and at University of Texas at Austin, I actually took an electronic music class where they actually had an EMU, a modular synthesizer EMU, where I actually learned how to do stuff on a real modular synthesizer.
Wow.
So, yeah, really, really cool stuff. And I learned also at UT how to do use Pro Tools and do recording. I had a recording studio internship. So all that sort of set me on the path to be able to do all my own. Like, I do all my own recording, and most of the PANJOMA videos are all me doing everything, I don't know what else to say.
That's awesome.
Right now.
Hey, that's awesome. So, what attracted you to electronic music?
That's interesting. So, I remember when Pretty Hate Machine came out, I was just obsessed with it. I was probably like, this is like what? I was like 8 years old or something. And also, when I was in my early teens, I started going to raves in Austin. And I mean, I was probably like 14 years old, doing X and whatever else, nitrous and balloons and whatever else they had around. And all the music that I heard, I just loved, and I fell in love with it. So, I was really influenced by the rave scene in Austin in the early 90s.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about your background. How exactly did you get into doing all this? Give me more details on this, because you have got such a great story and a great adventure here. Tell me more about all this.
Gosh, well, it's really hard to say. I actually went to school for philosophy. I have 2 degrees in philosophy, but the whole time I was doing philosophy, I was living in Austin, and I had a lot of friends that were musicians. All my friends have always been musicians. Austin is so inundated with musicians, and that's been so true for so long. So my first gigs were actually solely solo gigs. I had like a Korg Triton keyboard, and which had like a 16-track sequencer, and I would do these little beats and play. And it was actually really nerve-wracking being alone on stage back then. But those were my little first gigs when I was like 21 or 22 years old. Solo gigs around town. I used to play keyboard for a few bands in town.
That's awesome.
So how did I get started? I don't know. Just did this. It's like a dream. I'm not really sure how it started.
That's great. That's great. So, you've got some videos and some music up on YouTube. Tell me a little bit about this.
So, my new EP, I have several videos out that already. One called Bleeding Sun, that it's my first animated video, and I get asked a lot of questions about how I did all this, and I really just did everything in Adobe Premiere. I did not use After Effects at all.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And then the other video that's already out is called Sun and Moon, and that one was also I do everything in Adobe Premiere. That one was my theme is always psychedelic. I always have a psychedelic theme kind of with all of my videos, and Sun and Moon was like just all these loops, and it's just looped and looped and looped and looped. So that's kind of has this effect of tracers. So I kind of like that. And then the animated video for Bleeding Sun just really gets really warped out and tripped out looking. I would love for people to go check those videos out. There's going to be one more video coming out for the EP before it's all said and done, and I'm super excited about it. And it's probably the most psychedelic one yet. I'm kind of wearing this super psychedelic cat suit that I did all these like effects in Premiere where it's hard to describe, but I think people have told me that it's my best work yet, so I'm super excited to share it with everybody.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So why is it that electronic dance music and all this electronic music is so popular these days?
Well, you know what? It's really not popular in Austin, which is my home base, and I've actually had to fight that, so it's funny you bring that up. It might really be popular in the rest of the world. I'm kind of in a weird bubble in Austin musically, so I might really not even be the right person to ask for that. I'm surrounded by the hip hop community finally took root here, which is great. But other than that, no other electronic scene has ever taken root here, ever. So we're really sort of fighting against the grain, just doing what we do here. And we've been told many times that we would do better moving to LA or New York. But this is kind of my home, and I'm a Texas girl, so I like it here. So we're going to try to bring New York and LA here. Not that they're not already coming. Everybody from California is coming to Austin. That's a whole nother story, but it's totally true.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, you said something earlier that I just find amazing because I'm glad you're doing this, but you do all of your stuff in Premiere. You don't use After Effects or any of that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'm self-taught with everything. And so if I run into a wall, I just do a YouTube tutorial. I'm sure if I took the time to dive into After Effects and learn it and teach it to myself, I could do it. In fact, I know I could, but I feel like so far, like I've been able to do everything that I need to do just in Premiere. I don't know. I mean, I remember before Premiere came out, I was using this program called Vegas. So I don't know. Does anybody remember that?
I do remember Vegas. That there is a really good friend of mine who that was all he used back in the day.
Well, so did I. Well, long time ago. But yeah, so Adobe Premiere has just always been so awesome for me. I'm like, wow, this is great compared to where I came from. Compared to my roots in Sonic Foundry Vegas, I think was Sony Vegas. I think eventually. Gosh, I'm digging deep here. But yeah, I mean, Premiere is just all I've ever needed. I guess I don't know. That's not a very fancy answer, but yeah, it's just all I've ever needed.
Well, I think that's fantastic that that you have done that. I know there's a lot of people that they just swear by using After Effects and all this other stuff, and I have always thought, well, maybe I should learn After Effects, and then I'm like, I don't think I'm going to.
I have a friend who swears by touch design. And I really honestly think it's just the way different people's brains work. Because I tried to use touch design, and it was very counterintuitive for me. So maybe some people just brains work different. Just like some people have a Twitter brain, and other people have kind of like an Instagram brain. That's the way I describe it, at least with social media. Some people probably just have an Adobe Premiere brain, and some people just have an Adobe After Effects brain, and other people maybe just use touch design, which is like this whole other cool thing, but it's just not for me.
Well, I think it's great that you're doing what you're doing. So where do you see yourself as an artist here in a couple of years?
Well, hopefully after a couple of years, I will have had some festivals under my belt and some sort of song that just is charts. I'm not looking for a number one, but that is a goal of mine to just place on the charts. And honestly, after a few years from now, I'm hoping to have hit so many of my goals with PANJOMA. I know I'm pushing PANJOMA here, but I actually have a whole nother project that's not electronic music that I kind of my whole goal in life though right now is to hit up hit all these milestones with PANJOMA before I shift my attention. But by a few years from now, I'm thinking hopefully I will have hit a lot of those goals. The other project is more oriented towards like singer-songwriter blues. There's a little bit of a country in there. I am from Texas, so I have a lot of songs that I've written that don't actually fit in with PANJOMA, that are more for this other project called the Oracles. So in a few years, I hopefully actually will be able to do some more stuff for that other project as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, talk to me about some of the different people that you've worked with or collaborated with or what have you.
Oh, I have worked with so many people. Well, musically, recently I'm going to be releasing a single with my friend Joseph Salazar, and Joseph's project, he's involved with a project called Eternal Time and Space, and they did the soundtrack for the Halo multiplayer.
That's awesome.
Totally. And it's so funny because he's so supportive of me, you know, with my 30 Spotify followers, and his project, of course, because it's involved with Halo, has like 30,000 Spotify followers, and it's so funny. But he's so awesome, and he's been a big fan of PANJOMA for literally like 15 years. I've known Joseph for probably almost 20 years. So, and anyway, we're going to be releasing a song together this year. We're working on that on weekends, kind of right now when we can find the time. And musically, we released an album called Personicide, where we had a drummer, Chris Alvarez, and Chris was just really gifted, and he'd been on tour with Saul Williams and John Spencer Blues Explosion. So it was a real treat to work with him because he really was very good. Just in my life, I've one of my fun stories that I like to talk to people about is I used to be the shipping girl for Sacred Cow Productions.
That's awesome.
And so you're familiar with Sacred Cow Productions?
Yes.
Yeah. So I used to send out all the Doug Stanhope DVDs and the Bill Hicks DVDs and the Joe Rogan DVDs, and some people were still ordering VHSs, and I'm still friends with Kevin and his wife Trey. And that was just a great experience. Kevin actually put some PANJOMA in some of his documentaries. He had a documentary called American Drug War that was on Showtime that had some PANJOMA music in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm still friends with them. And I'm sure he wouldn't remember, but because it kept this at some show like 20 years ago, I actually got to meet Doug Stanhope.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's pretty badass.
And I got to see a couple of personal affectation of Bill's. You know, I'm like the biggest Bill Hicks fan on the planet. And so that was kind of cool to just see some of Bill's personal stuff. I don't know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we are going to do this. We are going to play Bleeding Sun. Before we get to that, tell me a little bit about this track.
Well, that track is actually the only instrumental track on the EP where I'm not singing. And every now and again that happens. We actually released an entire album once that I was only singing on one song. You know, as an artist, you really do need to know when to step away and let the music, like if the music does not need vocals, if vocals just takes away instead of adds to it, you have to know when to. I'm not looking to be in the spotlight on every song. I'm looking to make a good piece of art, you know. Like I said, we released a whole album that was like that once. But so this instrumental piece just is sort of starts to be a representation. It's like a kind of really psychedelic representation of the day in and day out of time, and it's kind of it has this backwards loop that's supposed to kind of pull the listener back. Kind of like a tide almost, but instead of being like repetitive, it's just a constant pullback. I don't know. We'll see if it does that to the listener. Maybe y'all can decide for yourselves, whoever is listening. But that was the goal for the track.
That's awesome. Well, before we let you go and we get to this track, how do we get in touch with you online, buy your music, support what you're doing?
Well, thank you, sir. Please find me on Instagram and Facebook and follow PANJOMA for, just daily updates and, stuff like that. We would love for you to find our music on Bandcamp. But also to follow us on Spotify would be really helpful to us.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for doing this. I apologize to getting to you so late. I feel horrible about that, but I'm glad we were able to make this work. So come back anytime, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Don't worry about it at all. I appreciate you.
Thank you. There she goes. That is PANJOMA. Right now it's Bleeding the Sun, and it's here on your Sunday radio broadcast. That is Bleeding the Sun, PANJOMA, and that is